Welcome to Musicians versus the World, the podcast where we explore aspects of music and musician life that may not have been covered in music school. I am your host, Christine Smith, and my guest today is composer Stuart Hancock. Stuart Hancock is an award-winning composer and arranger whose work spans all media, including film, TV, games, commercials, and stage and concert works. In 2023, Stuart had concert music commissioned in honor of His Majesty the King, and just before Christmas had his third opera premiered at the Royal Academy of Music. He is best known for his scores to BBC's Atlantis and the animated movie adaptation of We're Going on a Bear Hunt. His most recent work on the animated epic Kenske's Kingdom helps establish the children's book adaptation as one of the most sweeping and heartfelt stories of the year. So, Stuart Hancock, thank you so much for being here, and welcome to Musicians versus the World.
Thank you, Christine. Good to be here.
I'm actually so thrilled to talk with you. I truly enjoyed listening to this score and to all of your orchestral works. So.
Thank you. I mean, it was a real gift to work on, really, because a lot of the film is effectively a silent film.
Right.
So there was so much space to create a symphony, a real symphonic score, which is really developed with its themes and sort of follows a good broad pathway to telling that story. So yeah, it was an honor to work on it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, it was true, like what you say, a true symphonic score. Because as I was listening to this, I was thinking this could be just as comfortable on stage with an orchestra, a symphony playing this. Was that the goal from the very beginning?
I certainly have an ambition to do it live. Live to picture. That will be, the best thing to come out of this. It's. I mean, that wasn't obviously the goal. The goal was to score the film. But if I can perform it with the film live, as I have done with my other scores, like particularly We're Going on a Bear Hunt, I conduct that live to picture. Mm-hmm. Then that would be a wonderful outcome, for sure.
Yeah. So also, the scope of this project is amazing. Looking at this, the score is 1 hour and 13 minutes of, an hour and 20-minute film? My goodness, it goes through the entire thing.
Pretty much. But as I said, there's the way Frank Cottrell-Boyce, the screenwriter, adapted the book, he took out a lot of the dialogue.
Right.
So in the book, Kenske doesn't speak any English, but does speak some English, but in the film he doesn't. Mm-hmm. So the relationship between Michael the boy and Kenske develops without language, effectively, without spoken language. So the story is told a lot with the music and a lot with the just sort of beautifully animated facial expressions and gestures and also the sound design, the very, very the layers of sound design that Will Cohen, the sound designer, put into it. And here is Ada, my dog, entering the room. You can't see her. All the other aspects of the film became storytelling in place of scripted dialogue.
Yeah.
So there was the music did a lot of the heavy lifting.
Right. Can we talk a little bit about some of the themes and some of the things that you did to do some of that storytelling and maybe some of that character development?
So the directors Neil and Kirk and editor Richard put together a really, really good temp score for the movie. So they always saw it as quite an old-fashioned, traditional adventure family film, drawing a lot of inspiration from 80s adventure films. So, the story is actually set in the late 80s, I think 1989. So the temp score was a lot of John Williams, a lot of Silvestri and Horner and all those great composers of that era. So, obviously, John Williams he's not still going, is he? He's done his last film. He's still composing, but
he keeps saying that, and then he keeps on coming back to
yeah. So yes, that was the musical starting point, was the temp score, which was beautifully done, and the three of them have an encyclopedic knowledge of film scores and music, more than I do. So I had a good sense of where they wanted to be musically, and obviously the challenge with that is that they love the temp score too much.
Right, of course.
And there's always the case of temp love, but not so much. There was a couple of cues which were so very good in the temp score that it was a challenge to get past them. But I found ways. And
Yeah.
we got there in the end.
Right. Well, because when you listen to your score, it is very traditional because in the way of being completely orchestral, but it doesn't sound like a John Williams score. This is a Hancock score. Yeah, right. Yeah, because it doesn't sound like, and even with like the orchestration and everything, it's it's very, very, very different. How did you do that how do you stay away from the temp score but still have the same excitement and same feel and emotion that they're hoping for?
I guess the main tool for a score like this is establishing themes and establishing really strong, moody themes for particular moods and for particular characters. And obviously, we kick off with a big adventure theme right at the start,
Right.
which is called the Peggy Sue theme. Peggy Sue being the name of the boat that the family are on, and that immediately puts us at sea. I do it in 6/8 time. Has a very sort of sea shanty-ish bounce to it. But I'm delivering the theme with cellos and horns right at the start, and you're getting that proper film sound.
Right.
So yeah, that was the first one, and then a secondary theme comes in for Stella, the dog, who is absent to start with, but we discover she's stowed away on the boat. So her theme is based on the two syllables of Stella, Stella, which is one of the oldest tricks in the book to make a theme out of the name. But it's nice. It's just simply two notes, effectively. That's so useful for whenever Stella does something really cool, or she's leading the story in some way, or she's sniffing something even. So yeah, it's just sort of building up a good toolbox of themes that you can tell the story with, effectively. In terms of orchestration, yeah, I mean, I as you know, I orchestrate myself. I'm very comfortable doing that. I find that a lot of the composition happens in the orchestration.
Yes.
It's obviously all the color comes from there, from that process. I've never used an orchestrator. I know a lot of composers do. They have whole teams of orchestrators, and that's fine. It's not my way of doing things. It never has been. I enjoy the orchestration myself too much. I don't want to let it go. I don't know whether it's. I have trust issues with other people taking on my music. I'm a bit of a control freak in that. I mean, I do all my own copying work as well.
Do you really?
Which is a proper labor. But yeah,
wow.
Yes, I do. Which is hugely time consuming. But I find it. And I incorporate a proofreading side to it as well, so I know that all the mistakes are ironed out. And I tend to overmark my scores with dynamics and all that sort of stuff, just because I know recording session time is so limited, and you've got to make it on the page look like there is no doubt what I'm after. So that the musicians are reading that and they know exactly what they should be doing and how it should be sounding. There's, all the note cutoffs are very precise, and I'm really, really meticulous about it, but purely to make the most of the session time. That
because
we don't have much of.
Right, because you can run through it maybe once, maybe twice, and then you're recording, right?
If that, or even the first run through is recorded. When you're in a position where you have to move on. And if you just don't want any questions to arise, or questions of interpretation. Obviously, takes with the top professional musicians produce better things. It's you don't want to sort of waste time answering technical questions, really.
Yeah.
You want more time to do another take where
Yeah.
something else magical might happen.
Yeah.
So
What would you say is a common thing that is not written in that score when you go to a studio session? What's like the most common question that could be avoided by clearer copying?
I think it's probably making musicians aware of the phrasing
Mm-hmm.
and the shape of what you're doing, and that comes from hairpins as much as anything else, and
Okay.
rounding off the final note with a hairpin.
Yeah.
Just sort of for me makes it very clear where a
Mm-hmm.
phrase is finished. I mean, that might be the final note of the phrase, but just to mark it
Right.
and make a proper cutoff. You wouldn't fill a bar with a whole note, for example. I would tie it to the next quaver, to the next eighth note,
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
or do like a dotted half note plus a quaver plus an
Mm-hmm.
eighth note, just so you don't know exactly
Like
where that
exactly.
cutoff. I mean,
Oh, that's
I'm getting very pernickety now, but it's just sort of tools like that I think sort of help
yeah.
define things, if that makes sense.
And I think because something that we haven't talked about much on this show, but that you've kind of touched on is like time is money when you're doing these
Oh yeah,
scores. And so something like that, just having really clear scores for the musicians to read is a huge time saver, huge money
yeah.
saver. And
Especially on a score like this where
yeah.
it's a low budget film, effectively, and
Yeah.
there are a lot of limits to what we can and can't do.
Right. And to record an hour and quarter music, with on a low budget film
Yeah,
is like miraculous that you were able to do that.
yeah.
So,
Yeah,
but
it was. Yeah.
yeah, well, you did everything. Like you.
I added a few grey hairs in the process,
Oh.
but you can probably tell. But yeah.
So with it being this low budget film, and you were like the music department because you did everything. How did this work? Did they give you, here is our music budget? What can you do in this budget? How did that
Basically,
conversation
yes.
go?
Yeah. So everything the producers had worked out what they were assigning for each department before I came on board officially. So I was given a set budget, which was £80,000, British pounds. So
Wow.
what's that? 10,000, about
Yeah.
$100,000, I guess. On hearing that figure to start with, I thought, oh, yeah, okay.
Well,
But then when you actually work out what you need to achieve with that budget,
yeah.
I was required to, at the start to keep all the recording in the UK,
Okay.
which immediately stressed the budget
Right.
ridiculously.
Right. Because you had a 60-piece orchestra that you were working with.
I had, yeah, I did. When I did eventually record it, we did a session with 40, a session with 50, and 2 sessions with 60, plus choir, plus a handful of soloists. And I did find a particular named orchestra in the UK, world-class professional orchestra, who were on board and had quoted really, really competitively within the budget, and it was all going to work out. And then they realized that it didn't quite cover the bases that it needed to in terms of the usage. So cinematic, TV, DVD,
Yeah.
all these things add
Right.
up when musicians are budgeting,
Right.
and they didn't quite get their sums right, and that particular deal fell apart
Oh.
a couple of months before I was due to record them, and it really really left me in the lurch. And so where I ended up recording was Slovakia. I went to Bratislava
Oh,
and
okay.
worked with the Bratislava Symphony Orchestra, who I have worked with a number of times
Mhm.
on various projects, including adverts and TV stuff and other film stuff. But this was the biggest thing I'd done with them. And at the end of the day, working in Central and Eastern European with those musicians, it's cheaper.
Hmm.
It's at the end of the day, it works within your budget. I would say it's less than half, possibly a third the price of the UK
Wow.
recording in the UK. So it was viable. It wasn't my first choice. I would have loved to have conducted it myself, and worked on the score that I've been working on all this time. So ultimately, the producers had to agree.
Because things happen all the time. So were you like on a phone call with them while they were recording then?
Oh,
like
no, we all went. We all
you
flew
went.
over.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's only a couple of hours flight to get there.
Okay.
Yeah. So directors, producers, editor,
Oh, good.
sound mixer, we all piled over there. Had a great
Okay.
weekend. So yeah, that was all good. So the team all came physically with me and were in the room to hear it,
Okay.
which was great. So I was in the control room, communicating to the conductor who spoke English and Slovakian, so he was communicating. He's actually Spanish, David. So I know, crazy how your brain can work. But yeah, he's the sort of linchpin. David Hernando Rico, his name is. You'll see his name on a lot of film scores. He's excellent.
Okay, so were you composing at the same time you were figuring out all of this, like all these details, or did you compose first and then work this out, or vice versa?
My working period on Kenske's Kingdom was about 2 years from start to finish. So I came on board in late 2020, and we recorded in late 22.
Well, it's amazing that was able to happen. I'm glad that it all ended up working out.
Yeah. It was good. It was good. It was a challenge, but it was good. And we had the choir as well, the whole singers, who are a very, very good amateur UK choir.
They were so the choir was in UK. Okay.
Yeah, based in London. So we recorded in Airedale Studios in London for that. We had a 3-hour session with the choir, and we did the 14 hours, I think we had over 2 days with the orchestra over one weekend, effectively, which was a lot to achieve in one weekend. But one of the benefits of working with the European orchestras is they don't place limits over the amount of music you can record per hour.
Okay.
I don't know whether I imagine it's the same in the US, but the UK orchestras have a specific limit of number of minutes you can record in a session.
Oh, okay.
So if you've got a lot to record, you can plow through it without kind of someone keeping a stopwatch on how much you've actually recorded. So yeah, that's one benefit of going to Europe particularly.
Yeah, that's listening to you talk about this, that seems kind of overwhelming to be in charge of all of that at once. So yeah, good for you.
Yeah. I think it was I think one of the things that worked in our favor was the fact that it was a long working period.
Yeah.
I mean, animation is a slow filmmaking process anyway.
Yes.
So I was brought in quite early in the process, and I didn't work full time 2 years on it. It was on and off. But I was in at the what they call the animatic stage, which is where, I mean, you've worked in animation yourself, so you know, but you have a storyboard which is edited together. The still images are put together as a rough edit of the film, and temporary voices are in there, and so you have something to work to start quite early on before there's actually any animation in it.
Yeah.
So that 2 years on, we're recording, and yeah, so it's that thing where I can't remember where it comes from, but you have this thing where, so you want it to be really good, and you want it really, really quickly, and you want it really cheap as well. You can never have all three. It can be really quick and very cheap, but it won't be any good. And in this process, it was very good and very kind of cheap, but it wasn't fast. They didn't get it quickly because the working period was long, and it was
so, and that gave you the opportunity. Sense. So when you were composing this, going back to the kind of more artistic side rather than the business side, as you were composing this, you said that you orchestrate your own. Do you hear the grand product in your head as you're composing, or do you kind of flesh things out as you go? Like, do you do the orchestration and the theme building at the same time?
It sort of varies. I mean, I will typically uh, write it on a piano sound and record it on a very sort of basic sort of top line and chords very quickly. Sort of map out my structure, where my big hit points. Set the tempo up and just work within that framework. Um, I guess I do hear how it's will ultimately sound while I'm doing that. But just getting the basics down very, very quickly on a piano sound is how I go about it. Yeah, I guess that's
Yeah.
hard.
Well, the
Yeah,
reason I ask is because as I was listening to it, there's this one cue, I think it's like New Family, where it's like the cello and the flute are almost like having this beautiful little conversation. It's a very like quiet one, and I'm just thinking, oh, those two colors together just sound really, really, really nice. It's like, and then sometimes you have the excuse me. Sometimes you have the woodwinds. Sometimes you have the woodwinds like talking to each other. And so you'll have it over here and then you'll have it answered in the violas over there, and so it's just really nice. It's a beautiful way of having the orchestration add to your themes. So
I mean, that's I mean, as you can probably hear in the music, I just love doing that.
Yeah.
It's interesting you pick up on that theme. The director saw the movie as a love story between Kenske and Michael. Obviously, the companionship and the situation they find themselves in, and trying to make this life together on this isolated environment. So they wanted a love theme, and it's not a theme that we hear until about halfway through the movie, where there's a very intimate scene where we've just had a flashback to learn Kenske's backstory at Nagasaki. So he's a soldier who believes his family died at Nagasaki, and we find out how he came to the island. And so we find the common ground with them both losing their families. And there's a scene where they're just in the room together, and Kenske turns to Michael and says, "Kenske." And Michael goes, "Michael." And it's just exquisite. The animation is beautiful. So that was where the love theme was going to happen. And the directors had thought, right, well, these themes you've established for Kenske and Michael, the love theme should be like a kind of combination of the two, and you work them together. And which on paper sounds like a nice idea. In reality, it's really forced and kind of a contrived thing. I tried it; it just didn't gel. So also it became a new theme. I played it on the solo piano, and it was sweet and lovely, and just intertwined beautifully with those Kenske, Michael, just the phrases. And a lot of the rest of the film is based on that theme, including the piece you've just talked about, New Family, where I bring in strands of that theme, intertwine it with one or two of the other themes as well. And you throw it around the orchestra, and it sort of creates this sort of lovely warm thing going on between them, and the new life that they're beginning to succeed to make together. This new future. So it's really engrossing to get into the storytelling of music when you're pairing it with such a gorgeous film, with such beautiful, strong emotions to play with. So that's a treat to have worked on it.
Yeah. Do you just kind of get into this like zone, and you just hear things and you're just like, oh, what do we do? Like, I guess, is it more of an improvisation, or is it experimentation or craftsmanship when you get to that point?
I think it's a bit of both.
Right.
I think it's trial and error. You kind of when you pair the right music with the picture, you know you've hit the spot, sort of thing. I mean, with one of my favorite cues in the film is the final one, where it's quite a long, extended goodbye sequence. And it's a scene where it's a scene that the directors worked really, really hard to get right, because it's hand-drawn animation. We're dealing with just sort of really sensitive emotions, and you've got to draw everything together and let it go, sort of thing. And that's exactly what the music needed to do as well. So every theme that I'd written for the score has a final play, and then you let it go. It's sort of I know it's I'm sort of getting a bit talking about it, but that final scene is so beautiful,
right?
And I worked very, very hard to match the sensitivity of it, and you've got your cello solos, which we've heard in other cues, that they happen again. You've got a sort of lovely, lonely horn call happens when you start seeing. Don't want to give it away.
Spoilers.
But it just, and we hear Stella's theme for the last time as Kenske literally says sayonara. So it's very, very satisfying to have worked on long storytelling cues of music like that. I'm concerned that I won't get it this good again on a film. It was such a treat and an honor to work on it. It really was.
Yeah. Well, you also do concert music and operas. You've done a whole album of classical music. Have you always been drawn to the orchestra, or does that come as you grew and developed your career?
I took up piano when I was 8, and did quite well with the piano in the school. So said, well, here's a violin, learn violin too. Didn't do so well on the violin, switched to viola.
It's frustrating to play the violin at first.
Yeah. I got to a certain point and I wasn't going any further. But I switched to viola, and that really gelled for me.
Did it? Okay.
And I think my love of orchestra and orchestral music came from playing viola and orchestra in orchestras at school, and then later in university. And as I'm sure you know, the violas don't always get the hardest part in the orchestra. They don't always play the tune. We're quite often in the middle, just sort of filling out the chords and the rhythm. So you sort of you allow your ear to wander to where the interest is, and I became intrigued about how these sounds were put together, and I'd go home, a nerdy little kid, and look at the orchestra score and what I'd just heard, see what it looks like on the paper. So I think that's where my fascination with the orchestra comes from. And I think I can probably pinpoint my most favorite performance that I've been a part of.
Because that was my next question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you read my mind.
In terms of orchestra, a university, my first year at university, Cambridge University, I got into the orchestra, the main orchestra. I was like 7th desk of viola. And we did a performance of The Rite of Spring. And it was just mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing. And huge forces, the full orchestral university. Yeah. So obviously it's a massive orchestration anyway, but we had all the bells and whistles, and it was a very, very young Daniel Harding conducting, he's a very celebrated conductor now. He was a contemporary of mine. Not that I knew him at university. He was I think he was assistant conductor at the Berlin Phil at the time, assisting Claudio Abbado. So, and this is at the age of 20 or something ridiculous. He was sort of guest conducting his own university orchestra at the time. And it was an incredible experience rehearsing that and performing that and looking at the score to see how that was put together, and those incredible rhythms and just brutal sounds that Stravinsky made in that score, it's just sensational. So yeah, that's quite a special memory.
So do you find that you draw a lot of inspiration from Stravinsky then when you do your own orchestrations?
Particularly Rite of Spring, I do. Yeah. If we're going into a kind of brutal cue,
yeah,
I'll have a listen to Rite of Spring. Yeah. Try not to plagiarize it, but yeah, it's a really inspiring score in so many ways. I mean, it's the rhythms mostly, and it's those kind of unearthly sounds he puts together. But it's really thematically strong as well.
Right.
I mean, that opening theme on the bassoon, that's that's just heavenly.
Yes.
But yeah, there's a lot to love in that score. But I mean, that and John Williams' score. I mean, John Williams is God, basically. Yeah, utterly inspiring. So yeah, and I think uh, watching films as a kid in the 80s, like Jones and Star Wars, and I think it was my first experience of what music can do, just sort of suddenly becoming aware as a sort of 5, 6, 7-year-old. What's going on here? What am I hearing? This music is just incredible, and yeah, so sort of set me on the path to doing my music.
So if you were to talk to someone who wants to be doing what you're doing, what scores, I guess Rite of Spring, obviously, but what scores besides Rite of Spring would you say that they should be studying to learn really effective orchestration and score writing?
I mean, that's sort of the sort of score writing I did on Kensuke's Kingdom is not the sort of score writing that happens on every movie. I wish it was, but
I wish it was. It's my goodness, it's amazing.
I really hope there's still a place for it in people's hearts. This kind of movie and this kind of score.
Right.
Yeah, a good place to start is John Williams. Look at those Star Wars scores and that ET score, and Jerry Goldsmith as well. Some of his orchestration. I've got the score for his first Star Trek movie. It's mind blowing, absolutely mind blowing to look at that on paper. Another more contemporary hero of mine is John Powell, the composer. I've got his score to How to Train Your Dragon.
Well, yeah, that's an amazing
score. It's incredible, absolutely incredible.
I was wondering if you'd mention that one. It's incredible. Yeah, it
is. Yeah, amazing. Stunning. But what it is, what John and Powell and Williams do so incredibly well is it's not just the sound, it's not just the orchestration. It's that they're really, really good composers as well.
Yes.
They write good strong thematic, coherent scores that make sense. So I think if I were advising a sort of an up and comer starting composer, that it would be, don't forget to actually be a composer. Don't forget to make it make sense musically. It's one thing sounding like John Williams or John Powell, but don't forget they're really good composers as well. One thing that I was told when I was starting out was try and find your distinctive voice. And a number of people would say that, and I mean, I'm really young. I don't know what my voice is. It's like that's a really hard thing to achieve. So I would say, don't worry about finding your distinctive voice when you're starting out. You're going to be working with all sorts of people on all different jobs, and you've got to find the voice that's right for the job that you're doing. You don't want to stand out and do something so distinctive that it's just not right for the job.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I regret having been told that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, I mean, it didn't sort of hold me back, but it was like when I was trying to get work.
Oh, yes. Okay.
For example, and I wasn't actually doing it, I was just putting sort of show reels together and writing stuff off my own bat. I was told, find your own distinctive voice and your unique sound. Um, I don't think that should be the number one piece of advice that more experienced composers give to younger composers. You got to find the right voice for the job you're doing.
The job. Yeah.
Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So,
that does make sense.
yeah.
So you've been doing this, and you've been a composer and a successful composer for years. How have you seen that the job has changed over the years?
Gosh. So a lot of the work I do, and the bulk of my income is from adverts to commercials. So that's the world I've been immersed in for my whole career, right from getting my first job in 1999 to continuing today. And I was working on an ad job today. I think it's, to an extent, it's always been the case, but I think there's a lot of risk aversion in the commercial world, particularly. By which I mean there's an aversion to having a composer write you something new. If you're selling something, the familiarity of putting an existing piece of music on it to help you sell that dog food or that sanitary product, you'll, if you can afford it, you'll license a song rather than write something new, right? And I think that was the case 25 years ago, but there is so much more so now. I'll get asked to pitch for advertising work where there'll be a song on it, or there'll be a piece of John Williams, say, on it, no, it's usually Hans Zimmer these days. Sorry,
Yes, yeah.
sorry, John, but Hans has got the ad world to turn up. So they want the Hans Zimmer track, or they want something that sounds like the Hans Zimmer track, and you try and do it without sort of plagiarizing or infringing. Ultimately, if they can afford it, they're going to buy the Hans Zimmer track because they've bought into that. They've loved it. Whether you agree it's right or not for the job, that's what they want. There's a lot of Zimmer love in the world, and it's hard to get past that as a composer writing something new. And I think that trend has never decreased. I've not fallen foul of AI just yet, but it terrifies me what I've heard it can do. So I think that's going to be. I think it will have its place for a certain kind of job, but I hope it never quite replaces good composition, human composition, and sort of human interaction between director and composer, and finding the pathway to the right music. I don't think AI can quite do that. I hope. So let's hope not.
Well, and I think projects like Kenske's Kingdom and what you guys have done with your amazing composing and the orchestra and the hand-drawn animation, I think it's a really good reminder of what human artistry can do. And
absolutely, yeah.
And it's
I hope 2D animation, hand-drawn animation lives on.
I do too.
It's and there's a lot of wonderful 3D CGI stuff out there, but there's something really special about seeing those pencil marks and that the artistry that's gone into that drawing, and for me, it packs a bigger emotional punch somehow.
Yeah, it's like this connection that just straight human to human connection, and you just I'm with you on that. And your score was such a huge part of that, which I think maybe why it's so emotional, and it's just I just fell in love with this score, and I fell in love with this film, and it's wonderful.
Great.
But Stuart Hancock, this has been so wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I just wish you all the best. I know that this has been it's been nominated for some awards, so I hope it goes well for you.
We got some Annie nominations, which is fun, and we're the film is on the BAFTA long list for children's and family film. So Fingers crossed for a nomination this week.
Well, please let us know. Well,
Yeah,
I'll be
I will.
watching.
Yeah.
So we'll have you come back on post-win, and we can talk.
Bye then. No, it's been lovely to talk. Thank you,
Yes,
Kristen.
thank you.